everybody, it's Preacher. Today we're talking about progress rating. Strikes me as odd that in all the years I've been doing this and trying to teach you and instill into you the ideas that being a good raider is being more than just being able to press your rotation. In fact, the quicker and faster you can get to doing your DPS or healing or tanking without having to pay attention to your bars and all that kind of stuff, the better off you are, because you start taking in things like environment and position and all these things that we've done is stand out and how to do the extra bits that make you a great player from just a faceless member of the crowd. But when it's occurred to me that I haven't actually done a guide on how to progress raid, I was a little bit baffled myself. So here we are. A guide to progress raiding. How can we do it? I'm lucky enough to have been in a position where I've raided for a very long time without the use of things like videos and written word and descriptions and being able to access a ton of resources. And people ask me, why are certain players in the high-end guilds always consistently better than the guys in the lower guilds until people move up to that level? And mainly it's because they have to learn. Now that might sound really strange because of course people learn fights, but they learn in a very, very different way, in a way that makes them a much better player day on day. They learn in a way with having to literally work everything out for themselves. Now I'm raiding in a place where there are access to those resources. A lot of things came back to me that I used to do as a raider, and things that I grew out of, and that's why I haven't really touched on a guide for progress raiding, and more importantly, the mindset you go into in progress raiding. What strikes me as odd is I believe, in my heart of hearts, that most people go into a progress raid with the wrong mindset. The really wrong mindset, and mostly that mindset is, we are going to kill this boss. The only fucking way in the world you're going to kill a boss in your first couple of pulls is if that boss is woefully undertuned, or a gift boss, or what Blizzard dubs a breather boss. In most cases, you're not going to do that. But are people wrong for having that mindset? Kind of, but not really. The thing is, there is access to so much information on how people deal with bosses and how this boss should be killed that people go in thinking they know all about this boss and have this confidence level that's not really warranted. There's a vast difference between knowing what happens and being experienced in what happens. I kind of see it like a virgin. Yeah, take a virgin, he watches a porno and then he strides confidently into a three-way. Let me tell you, there's going to be some wipes. You're not going to do that. There's going to be a few wipes there, buddy. It's not going to work out quite as you planned. So, my first tip that I would give you when I go into progress raiding, what I believe is the best way of going into progress raiding, and the way that a lot of the top-end guys go into progress raiding, is that, one, you're not really trying to kill the boss as soon as you pull that boss. You're not really trying to do that. And people look at learning as something like mastering the main points of the fight. Some people might look to the raid leader and say, well, you didn't guide us correctly. And that's wrong. That's wrong. In fact, most guides and stuff, if you look at the awesome stuff the Fat Boss guys put out, is how to deal with the main points of the fight. At certain points, we will have to deal with this, and this is what we're going to do. We deal with it. And that's going to be 40 seconds into the fight. About a minute and a half into the fight, we're going to have to deal with this. So you need to cope with it in such a way. It might be a tank attack. It might be mad AoE going out on the raid. It might be some sort of burst phase for the DPS to deal with. All this kind of stuff. If we look at a fight like Blackhand, we have things like going up into rafters. We need to be able to deal with that. We have tanks coming out. We have to deal with that and all this kind of stuff. And your raid leaders and your healing team and your tanking team and your DPS team will work out ways of coping with those specific points of the fight, which are the most important parts of the fight. Those are the big hitters. That's when the raid needs to work together as a coherent unit. The problem is, not many videos, not many guides, and in fact, probably none, actually tell you what goes on between that 0 and 40 second mark. And what will you find when you get into those fights? When you get into the big progression stuff, when you get to Imperator and all this kind of stuff, and you start working on the more difficult fights, is you actually die way earlier than this main point that the guy told us that's what we should be ready for. That was the big hard bit, but we died way before that. What the hell's going on there? And what tends to happen is you have this sort of preset vision of what you're going to be doing in the fight. Now, and what I see most players do is they actually stick to that, regardless of the fact that they're actually now taking part in the fight and things are very different. And it comes across as a sort of stubbornness or an unwillingness to change what you're doing. The main thing that you're after when you're progress raiding, every single time, is you as a player. This isn't as a guild, as a raid. This is you as a player. What you are trying to contribute to every single progress fight of worth is consistency. Consistency. Because breaking progress without consistency is extremely difficult. Very, very difficult. You need to work out how do you ensure as a player that you are not going to A, cause a problem, B, die, to all these things that are going on during the fight when it's actually in its normal standard kind of phase. Yes, there is a big thing coming up, but in between that, the boss is doing plenty of other stuff that's the minor stuff that you as a player have to cope with. You, as a player, are trying to get yourself into a position as soon as possible where this fight literally cannot kill you. Yeah? People cannot die here, if you're looking at it from a healing perspective. From a tank perspective, you cannot die and everybody can do their DPS properly. You're looking for that consistency. And that means that it doesn't matter if you do 100 pulls or 1,000 pulls, everything will go right there. Everything will go right because each player has developed a consistent individual tactic of how to deal with all this minor stuff that goes on there. How to deal with it in an appropriate way where their damage is nice and high, their healing is nice and high, your mitigation is nice and high, and on top of that, you're moving on to the next big thing and you're in a good position to get there because you took the least amount of damage possible, you got to the boss faster, you did all these things. You got a higher mana than normal, blah, 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 blah. Consistency. How many of you have been in this position? Where for a couple of pulls, everything went really well. And you actually got quite far into the fight. You're like, that was badass, man. We actually got this nailed down, dude. Let's say it's a multi-phase fight. You got to phase 2, piece of piss, or a couple of tries. It was awesome. Then what the fuck? The next 4 pulls, we couldn't get past phase 1. Are we going backwards as a raid? Are people getting bored? Are they getting sloppy? What's happening? No. What happened is that the people who didn't have a consistent strategy, or they thought they had a consistent strategy, got caught out. You might have had debuffs flying out, which is a minor part of the fight, but the people who got those debuffs in your first couple of pulls were the guys who could handle them, or already had a strategy in place that dealt with them. What happened in your next few pulls is everybody else got them, yeah? Everybody else got them, they'd never seen it before, they weren't quite sure how to deal with it, and it caused a problem. In the last try, certain things happened that meant that just naturally, without you trying to do a consistent strategy, is you survived and you did well. But unfortunately, you didn't actually develop a consistent strategy for dealing with it. You just got lucky. And that happens a lot, especially when there's things that target random people which get thrown out randomly, is sometimes you get lucky and it just doesn't affect you. But that's not a consistent strategy, because sometimes that is going to catch you out. And that's where you need to change your strategy. Now, where people fall down is they don't change, because for the last 2 pulls, I was fine. So the next pull I'll probably be fine. Oops, no, I wasn't. Try again. Oops, no, I wasn't. Try again. And that's 2 wipes that have been caused because you didn't change your strategy. You were just literally relying on RNGesus to shine on you. Hope is not a consistent strategy. And it never is. I can't tell you this enough. Hope is not a consistent strategy. If you died once, why did you die? How can that not happen again? And it's so easy to think like that. What killed me last time? Oh, it was the damage from X thing. Okay, so how do I make sure that that never, ever kills me again? Sometimes it can be down to the healer's screwed up. Fine, if that's what happens, cool, then you don't really need to change anything. But it happens again, but the healers didn't screw up, and I still died. What happened there? And these kind of strategies are really simple. They're not things that you'll find in the ordinary boss guides or anything like that. It might be like, I need, in my raid, because of the way we do it, if this thing hurts me if I'm close, maybe our melee, I need to move out a little bit further. Maybe I know that some of the range likes to drift every now and again, so I need to move a little bit further than what I would like, but I lose a little bit of damage, a little bit of healing, but ultimately, I will never die to this mechanic. And let me tell you, as soon as people start dying in these fights, oh, you're going to have a bad time. A bad time. Consistency is what you're aiming for in progress. That is why we do progress. What doesn't fucking matter? What doesn't matter? Your deeps, first of all, your deeps do not matter. They don't matter because you're going to wipe. You know those guys who are linking damage meters after a wipe. Like, hey, dude, we only got a third of the way through the fight, but look at my deeps, brah. It's like, dude, no, no, we don't do it that way. No, that's no good. It doesn't fucking matter. DPS meters and such are important in progress. They are, but they're important for checking things like, do we have a group assigned to do certain things? What is the damage coming out of those? Oh, well, that class is doing really poorly. Is it the player or is it the class? Do we need to change things? Are people switching appropriately? If we have to kill the fucking tiger, in the case of Kargath, why is one guy doing 2 million damage and the other guy's doing 60k? What's happening there? Why aren't you switching? That's when the damage meters are important. What the overall DPS is? Not really. At all. In any way. Why? Because you didn't kill the boss. Show me the damage meter at the end of the boss. That's when we care about who did some mad deeps. Yeah? Not during your wipes. A lot of people are so focused on killing the boss. I actually find that to be the biggest mistake. I am determined, without having seen this fight, experienced this fight, know there's lots going on in this fight, and it's a really long fight, or it's a really hard fight. I'm determined to do the most damage I could possibly do in the first few pulls. Why? Your first few pulls of your fight, every time you do progress, is my next tip for you, are about testing. Testing things that your class can do. Using cooldowns. I used a cooldown to survive this. That's my consistent strategy. However, that cooldown wasn't ready for the next one, and I died. So how can I fix that? What can I do? Do I need help from somebody? Can we ask people for stuff? Consistency every single time. That's what it's about. You look at any progress pulls in a top fight and you'll see people doing all kinds of crazy shit. People are trying to disarm if it's still in the game. They're trying to interrupt things. They're trying to stun things. They're trying to cast bops on things. They're trying to bubble things. They're trying to see exactly what they can do. The mages are randomly ice blocking. All this kind of stuff is going on. Why? Because they need answers to questions. Can I do this? Can I do it consistently? Can I do it every single pull? I can't? Okay. Question answered. I need to develop a different way of doing things. What I'm not going to do is rely on hope. And hope I don't get this thing. Because you never know. It might be you. And if it does happen to you, do you want to be the guy that caused the wipe? Or do you want to be the guy who doesn't give a shit that they get certain debuffs? Doesn't give a shit that things landed near them? Doesn't give a shit if they had to switch targets and do various things? Because why? I developed a strategy that counters that. I have a nice way of always dealing with that scenario. I know that at 3 minutes I have X cooldown ready to go because we've tested it, I've tried it, and I know that if I use it at one point, I have it back at this point. And therefore I have a consistent way of dealing with this thing every single time. It sounds obvious when you say it, but it's not. So many people go in with the mindset as I've seen this boss, I've read the dungeon journal, I've done everything I could possibly do research-wise. I'm pretty confident we're going to kill this boss. Why are you confident in that? It's so different when you're in there and actually dealing with the fight at a much faster pace than sat watching it while stroking the Cheeto dust off and all those kind of things. Not to make a really turgid analogy, but you get the idea. Experiencing it is far different. That raid might have a completely different strategy, a completely different raid makeup, completely different ways of dealing with the situation that your raid simply doesn't have access to. They might have a different healer comp that's using cooldowns in a way that you're not, because you can't. And therefore your raid has to adjust and learn and try and fail in order to work out which way wins. It's really sad to see when you see the same people are getting hit by the same things. I'm sure you've heard it a million times. Some people are still getting hit by those things. Some people aren't necessarily bad players, but those people aren't developing a strategy. They're not thinking about their position at certain points. If you randomly die sometimes in certain positions, then your position is wrong and you need to be thinking about changing it. And you need to try a different position every pull until you find the one that's perfect. Oh, I found this position and you know what? It's actually really, really good. I don't have to deal with this. I can consistently avoid all these things and your life will be so much better. And then you'll start moving through phase 1 or whatever it might be easily every single time. Never have a problem. Never ever have a problem. That is the mindset of being a progress raider. It's about learning. You're not trying to kill the boss. If you use a consistent strategy of personal achievement so you can always be in a position where this fight cannot kill you, guess what? He will die. If this boss cannot kill you, you're not going to die. It's as simple as that. He is. The boss will fall. Alright guys. Hope that helped you out. Some of you maybe overstretch your reasoning and overlook what might be happening in the future and trying to get into a too confident a position before you actually step into a boss fight. Treat it as a learning experience, because once you start adapting yourself to various mechanics and looking at mechanics and how you can deal with them and then developing a way of always coping with them, You'll be able to apply that to so many more bosses, so much more in the future, and your raid will learn faster, they will cope with things faster, and you will win faster. It's as simple as that. Alright guys, I'll see you again. Bye bye.